经没呼吸心跳了，你们快点行不行啊？
但等那个领导联系啊，我们也没办法，我们那个
人呼吸心跳都没了，你们明明有 AED， 为什么不借给我们呢？
This was an end-of-year compilation of real-life moments that captivated the Chinese public in 2022. The video quickly went viral after it was posted on December 29, but it was quickly taken down, sparking criticisms from Chinese social media users. On the same day, the government's official news agency published a post that included 10 of the supposedly biggest news that happened in China in 2022. The only mention of COVID-19 was in point 10, and it was only mentioned as an effusive praise for the precise and scientific methods used to guide the government's COVID-19 strategy. This censorship suggests that the Chinese government still sees the narrative around its COVID-19 management as a politically sensitive issue. But weeks before, they had just decided to roll back on its zero-COVID policy, to the surprise of many Chinese. So why did it suddenly and abruptly open up?
I guess no one actually could predict that they will open up so quickly. Even in November, you also could have no idea about why they open up in December.
The timing of the reopening seemed kind of strange, considering the fact that China stuck to its zero-COVID policy for the last 3 years, despite the growing unhappiness from the Chinese about having to deal with the world's strictest COVID measures. Just imagine having to go through almost daily mandatory testing and produce negative test results in order to use basic amenities. And don't forget the shortage of food supplies due to distribution issues. And then there were the sudden lockdowns to whole residential and commercial compounds that can happen anytime should a single person in the building test positive for COVID-19.
Basically, at the policy level, they have two documents, very important document. In November, they had one document called 20 points. 20 points basically ask local government to regulate the behavior. Their behavior already caused a lot of concern. For example, very much draconian measures imposed in different cities. Then city competed to actually double down the measures.
Despite the mental toll it took on people, they were somehow able to live with it. That was until a fire broke out in an apartment building in Xinjiang that killed at least 10 people. The deaths, widely seen as a result of the strict COVID measures in place that allegedly trapped residents in the building and delayed rescue efforts, set in motion a series of nationwide protests that saw ordinary Chinese take to the streets to call for the dismantling of the harsh anti-epidemic measures. As the demonstrations went on, there were even calls for Chinese President Xi Jinping to step down. Despite the widespread public dissatisfaction, Chinese state media continued to heap praise for the policy that they said stabilized the economy and protected lives.
So central government was concerned about the reaction at the local level. So you could see that the protests occurred during the period of time. Then they announced 10 points on 7th of December.
Many cheered when most of the measures were finally lifted and went out onto the streets celebrating. But not for long, as a surge in cases quickly forced people indoors and back into their homes. Clinics and hospitals were flooded with patients, and people rushed to snap up cold and fever medications. This resulted in a shortage that saw the price of these medicines go up by as much as 4 to 5 times. No official reason was given for the abrupt change in policy, but Xi did acknowledge the protests, saying it was by students who were frustrated after 3 years of the pandemic.
That's the very critical document. This document laid down the foundation of living with COVID. So if you say that the end of zero COVID strategy actually was associated with this document. But out of this document, they did not have say, for example, in many countries, they have roadmaps. And lots of people also anticipate that Xi Jinping could come out to say something, or Xi Jinping also keep silent. So we have no idea why they had this sudden U-turn policy.
The protests were lauded by many as the reason why the government relented on their strict measures. But Professor Wu thinks this is just one of the factors.
So I think then protests occur suddenly. No one actually could predict that, because of after 1989, people thought that Chinese are very much like afraid of going against government. They will not actually express anger through protest. But I would think this may be just one factor leading to the U-turn of public policy. I think the gap between the government and the people is huge in China. At the national level in this November, a lot of people talk about how China was doing very good in terms of COVID management. But at the grassroots level, anger was so strong. Many people lose the job. and university students cannot go to campus for study. They just stay at home. A lot of people were so frustrated with the government's policy, but the government did not realize that.
But the protests have led to a certain minority of people, even outside of China, thinking that the people are simply getting a taste of what they asked for. Professor Wu, however, has a different view. He thinks that a country opening up to live with COVID-19 doesn't mean opening up without gradual steps or phases.
Yeah, ideally, I would say that according to many countries' experience, including Singapore, they do need to have a roadmap. They need to communicate with people effectively. So now a lot of people argue that if at that time they did not do Shanghai lockdown, if they just ask Shanghai to live with the COVID, then gradually the whole country also can live with the COVID, then it will be much better.
Professor Wu also thinks that the problem is that there isn't much transparency in how these decisions are made.
So a lot of people speculate that maybe Xi Jinping got COVID in APEC because he sit with Hong Kong Chief Executive John Lee. Then John Lee actually tested positive when John Lee returned to Hong Kong. So a lot of people speculated Xi Jinping might get a COVID. Then he thought COVID is not so severe. Then he decided. But anyway, this is also a point to one-man politics, because in China, only Xi Jinping can make this decision. The decision making is non-transparent. We have no idea how he evaluated the situation. He may think everyone will be okay like him, but he has a special medical treatment. Not everybody, particularly people in rural China.
So while we don't exactly understand why the Chinese government suddenly decided to dismantle its COVID measures after 3 years, we might have a better idea of why they were so insistent on the zero COVID policy in the first place.
Xi Jinping think it's about face issue. You know, Chinese culture, he does not want that kind of U-turn. But they made a lot of mistakes. For example, mRNA vaccine. They thought China's vaccine already enough, so Sino vaccine, Sinopharm. They did not provide alternatives to people. They promote vaccine nationalism. They ask all people, including overseas Chinese, to have Sino vaccine and Sinopharm. But now, if we look into these, the end result, particularly look into the situation occurring in China, a lot of people speculate why now a lot of patients in China feeling so bad. The reason is very simple. They have ineffective vaccine. It's all about face. Even you get the mRNA now, it's too late because vaccination takes time. They only can actually help in the second wave of COVID. Now it's a first wave. Yeah.
In a televised speech on New Year's Eve, he said China's policies were optimized when the situation and time so required. He also said that while it's still a time of struggle, with everyone's perseverance and hard work, victory is ahead. So what lies ahead for China now that it's turned its back on its zero COVID policy? Cases will likely continue to surge, especially in the rural areas, and as millions of people prepare to travel across the country to celebrate the Lunar New Year. After 3 years of being micromanaged, many ordinary people are now left to deal with the virus themselves. For now, as the country retreats from its long-held zero COVID strategy, the battle with COVID continues.